Thank you very much. I come here to express my solidarity. And in 5 minutes, I've been asked to speak on the challenges to society and social movements from an Asian perspective. And in this 5 minutes, I hope to have 5 points, and which lead up to 5 challenges which I have chosen out of the many which are there. I think my first point is that currently there are 3 contesting discourses linked to policy, goals, structures, and values. The first is the dominant hegemonic discourse linked to power, profit, and resource hegemony. It is maintained largely by the ruling regimes with linkages to transnational cooperation, to the transnational elite, to corporate interests, their beneficiaries, and their consent producers. It broadly represents what we call, we've all been calling the neoliberal globalization impetus that is combined with militarized securitization. In Asia, the regimes are using this, but they have appropriated the progressive anti-colonial national liberation struggles, but completely distorted it by using and adopting the neoliberal paradigm. But they continue to use it in their words. But when you see the impact of what they're doing, it is gradually and very clearly becoming a transition to controlled democracies and managed stability. The second discourse is a kind of a counter-revolution which is happening because of the dominant discourse, and that is a movement in structures, a movement to the right, a movement of right-wing parties, right-wing politics, and right-wing common sense, where it is supported in some states by a silent majority, sometimes by an urbanized, aspirational youth, especially combining of young men, and in other states of very violent movements. These are evident in almost all Asian states. These counter-revolutionary movements are actually a binary of the hegemonic discourse, and they're attempting to capture power through violence, even if it is localized. Overall, most of them, these are hierarchical in character. They have created militias or vanguards, even in a democratic country like India, which has been proud and it calls itself the largest democracy. There is now a right-wing government which has militant vanguard which threaten dissent, opposition, etc. And this is there in almost all Asian states. They cannot tolerate difference, and they deal with difference through violence. They use the tactics of sexual violence, of punishing women who do not conform or who oppose. And they especially cannot tolerate minorities. They work through the capture of resources and military equipment, and therefore they are linked to many illegal forms. So sometimes these counter-revolutionary movements, sometimes they speak on behalf of identity groups. Sometimes they say they represent the poor, etc. So the first challenge, therefore, is the alternative as represented by AEPF, etc., to both these discourses linked to policy. The second challenge is that on the whole issue of increasing militarization linked to the first set of policies. But in this, when you see these policies, there is also an attempt by states to get some kind of moral legitimacy and support of people. So the challenge to civil society, therefore, is to question this moral legitimacy because whenever they use repression, it's either about national security, it's about legitimacy, etc. So the second challenge to civil society is to challenge the militarization which is coming with the first challenge. The third challenge is the fact of majoritarianism, which is again a trend in almost all Asian states. Instead of increasing or deepening or making it participatory democracy, many of the structures and institutions and goals of participatory democracy are in fact being morphed into majoritarianism in the name of democracy. And cultural differences are not being respected, and there's a politics of violent retribution. So this is a major challenge before especially the Asian civil societies, social movements. Many of them are very specific, but they need to see how they can challenge the kind of majoritarianism that is coming. And that was a reason for a large number of conflicts, whether in South Asia, in each of the South Asian states, Sri Lanka, India, is because of majoritarianism, either imposing language or imposing a particular religion or a particular identity and expecting everyone to conform to this. Just day before yesterday, for example, Myanmar asked the Rohingyas that they should give up their ethnicity and then they would get citizenship. This is just one example of this kind of majoritarianism. The fourth and the last, therefore, is the need for social movements and civil societies to fight for their own survival. Social movements and civil societies, this is, I find, a major challenge. The space that they created over all these years is being squeezed, and this is very evident in all the Asian states. You can begin with the democracies and go to the military regimes and to the authoritarian regimes. There are gradations, but there are there. Recently, when I've traveled through Asia, I'll just give you one or two examples, and I end there. In Thailand, a journalist, just for obliquely criticizing the military, was produced in court in chains and sentenced. In Myanmar, I met a woman who said that she was in jail for 18 years and no one knew, for opposing the military. In India, who's part of BRICS, the government took out a list of NGOs and subjected them to inquiries because they said they are foreign funded and anti-national. And our former prime minister, and the current prime minister, the former prime minister said that because of civil society and NGOs, India lost 5% of its GDP. They were, yes, and they put charges of sedition against the anti-nuclear power movement. They're fighting for sedition. And then there's some anti-nuclear activists who have not been able to touch the mainland. They go from island to island in boats. So these are just instances of what are the challenges to civil society and how we have to struggle to survive, and the disappearances and what we began with and how it is happening and taking so many different forms. And I think we need to compare this, to bring it together, because, and I think and my conclusion is that there is an attempt by the hegemonic discourse to fragment these, to show that one thing is part of the economic issue, or one thing is part of growth, the other thing is just foreign policy and national interest. We have to show how all these intersect, that if there is a neoliberal economic policy. There will be a foreign policy to link with that. And I think I'll conclude this. And these are some of the challenges. So it's almost like restarting this. Thank you very much.